I don't look at the sky much anymore. My grandson asks me sometimes if I miss flying. He thinks because I was in the war, because I was in an armored division that swept across Europe, I must love the machines. He buys me model kits for Christmas, B-17s, Lancasters. He hangs them from his ceiling on fishing line, spinning in the draft from the air conditioner. I walked into his room last week. The fan was on, the plastic planes were swaying, casting shadows on the walls that looked like sharks circling. I threw up, right there on the beige carpet. It wasn't a memory of glory. It was a memory of noise. You think you know loud? Loud is a rock concert. Loud is a jet engine on a runway. But what happened in the Luzon Valley wasn't just loud. It was a pressure. It was a physical hand that reached inside your chest, grabbed your heart, and squeezed it until it stopped beating. People talk about friendly fire like it's a mistake, a clerical error. Oops, wrong coordinates. But when you are on the ground, watching the bomb bay doors open, it doesn't feel like a mistake. It feels like a murder. I want to tell you about the arguments. That's what the history books leave out. They tell you about the dust and the wind, but they don't tell you about the screaming over the radio. They don't tell you that we saw them. We looked them in the eye, and they dropped anyway. I'm 89. I don't have time for metaphors about flowers or forgiveness. I just have the static, the sound of a radio channel that no one is listening to. But my memory is just one frequency. To understand why it happened, you have to hear the other voices, the ones in the air and the ones burning on the ground. The inside of a Sherman tank in August is an oven. The steel hull absorbs the sun and amplifies it, cooking the men inside like meat in a tin. In the turret of Calamity, the breech of the 75mm gun slammed shut with a metallic clank that vibrated through the floorboards. Lieutenant David Ross wiped a smear of heavy grease from his hands onto his trousers and kicked the back of the gunner's seat. "Smitty, traverse left. You're drifting," Ross barked. Smitty, the gunner, didn't look up from his telescopic sight. Sweat was dripping from his nose onto the rubber eyepiece. "Hydraulics are sluggish, boss. It's this dust. It's eating the seals. If I push it any harder, the line is going to blow." "Well, stop complaining and muscle it," Ross snapped. He keyed his intercom, the switch clicking against his throat mic. "Vance, what's the word from the poles? Are they ready to step off?" Down in the bow, buried in the dark belly of the tank, Corporal Artie Vance was wrestling with the dials of the wireless set number 19. He pulled one headphone cup away from his ear, wincing at the screech of static. "They're swearing, sir," Vance said. "Specifics, Vance." "Sergeant Kowalski says his engine filters are clogged. He says..." Vance paused, listening to the angry Polish chatter cutting through the interference. "He says if the Americans don't show up in 5 minutes, he's going to drive to Berlin and kill Hitler himself with a wrench." Ross permitted himself a tight, humorless smile. "Tell Kowalski to keep his wrench handy. Engine off. Save the fuel." Ross climbed out of the hatch, the heat hitting him like a physical blow. The air smelled of dry grass and diesel fumes. It was dangerously quiet. No birds, no wind, just the ticking of cooling metal and the heavy breathing of 1,000 men waiting to kill or be killed. 10 yards away, Sergeant Janusz Kowalski was standing on the rear deck of his Sherman Firefly Zemsta. The Polish winged hussar painted on the turret was coated in a thick layer of white limestone powder, making the tank look like a ghost. Kowalski spotted Ross. He mimicked holding a bottle and shook his head. Thirsty. "Hey, Canada!" Kowalski yelled over the low idle of the column. "You have water? My radio man drank all of ours. He drinks like a camel. Ross unhooked his canteen and tossed it. Kowalski caught it one-handed, a movement of casual grace for a man so large. He took a long swig, water spilling down his dust-caked chin, and wiped his mouth with the back of a greasy glove. He pointed a grim finger at the northern horizon. "They're late," Kowalski grunted. "They're coming," Ross assured him, adjusting his goggles. 8th Air Force, 800 heavies. It's going to be a show, Janusz. Show, Kowalski scoffs. He looked at the sky with suspicion. I don't need a show. I need a hole in the German line. If they miss, he drew a finger across his throat. They won't miss. They have the Norden bomb sight. They say they can drop a pickle in a barrel from 20,000 feet. I have seen barrels, Kowalski said darkly. I have not seen pickles. Suddenly, the ground created a low, thrumming sound. It wasn't an earthquake. It was deeper. On the fender of Kowalski's tank, a loose wrench began to dance. Clink, clink, clink. It rattled against the steel hull, faster and faster. Ross looked at the wrench. Then he looked up. The roar began. It swallowed the sound of the idling tanks. It swallowed the banter. High above, the blue sky turned to silver. Hundreds of 4-engine bombers, flying in tight boxes, blotting out the sun. Finally, Smitty yelled from inside the turret, popping his head out. Here comes the cavalry! Kowalski didn't cheer. He narrowed his eyes, shielding them from the glare. He shouted something in Polish to his crew, his voice sharp. Ross leaned closer, trying to hear over the drone of 3,000 engines. What? I said, Kowalski screamed, pointing up. Why are their doors open already? 5,000 feet above them, the world was vibrating. Inside the nose cone of the B-17 Lucky Lady, the plexiglass was shaking so hard the horizon line was a blur. Second Lieutenant Tex Miller had his eye pressed to the Norden bomb sight, his fingers twitching over the release toggle. Pilot, I'm not getting a lock, Miller shouted into his mask. There's too much haze. I can't distinguish the quarry from the village. It's all just gray soup. Major Bradley's voice came over the intercom, calm but firm. We are on the clock, Tex. Formation drops in 30 seconds. Trust the navigator. Navigator, Miller barked. Check your drift. The wind feels stronger up here. If we drop on the time-distance calculation, we might be short. Drift is calculated, Miller, the navigator snapped back, his voice edgy. Don't second-guess my math. We are over the target area. That smoke down there? That's the target markers. The Germans are burning smoke pots. Miller looked down. He saw a churning white cloud. It didn't look like smoke pots. It looked like dust. The kind of dust kicked up by hundreds of tank tracks churning dry earth. That doesn't look like target smoke, Miller insisted. That looks like movement. It's the battle, Miller. Drop the damn load. Lead is opening doors. Miller's hand hovered over the toggle. Sweat stung his eyes. He looked at the white cloud, then at the crosshairs. His gut twisted. I'm telling you, it feels short. That is a direct order, Lieutenant. Drop. Miller cursed under his breath. He flipped the toggle. Bombs away. On the ground, Ross saw the black specks detach from the silver bellies of the planes. They fell in a lazy arc, beautiful and terrifying. He didn't scream reverse this time. There is no time for reverse when gravity is the enemy. He dropped into the turret, his boots slamming onto the basket floor. He kicked the driver hard in the right shoulder. Driver, hard left. Get behind the berm. Sir? The driver asked, confused by the panic in his officer's voice. Move! The engine roared. The tracks spun, biting into the dry earth. The tank pivoted violently, throwing Smitty against the breech of the main gun. "What the hell, boss?" "Brace!" Ross screamed, grabbing the commander's override handle. "Mouth open! Hands off the metal!" The first bomb didn't hit a tank. It hit the limestone shelf 50 yards to their right. The energy transfer traveled through the bedrock faster than through the air. Inside the tanks, the men didn't hear the explosion first. They felt the hull jump. A 30-ton steel beast hopped 4 inches into the air and slammed back down. Bolts sheared off inside the suspension with sounds like pistol shots. Glass dials on the instrument panels shattered inward, spraying the drivers with shards. Then, the air pressure wave hit. It turned the white dust into a solid wall of force. It stripped the canvas off the supply trucks. It turned the air inside the lungs of the men outside into a vacuum. Inside Calamity, darkness fell instantly. The emergency lights flickered on, dim, red, hellish. Dust poured in through the ventilator fans, choking them. "Sound off!" Ross coughed, tasting blood and limestone. "Smitty! Vance!" "I'm here," Smitty groaned from the gunner's seat. "I bit my tongue. Blood everywhere." "Vance, the radio. Get on the net." Vance was scrambling on the floor plates, his hands shaking uncontrollably. "It's dead. The mount snapped." "Fix it." "I can't fix shattered tubes, sir. It's junk." "Kick the hatch. We have to signal." Ross pushed up on the commander's cupola. It wouldn't budge. Debris from the explosion had jammed the hinges. Panic, cold and sharp, spiked in his chest. "Smitty, help me!" Together, they shoved their shoulders against the steel. They grunted, straining until the veins in their necks bulged. Grind, screech, clang. The hatch flew open and the light blinded them. Ross emerged into a nightmare. Visibility was 10 feet. The air was brown and stinging. He scrambled out onto the engine deck and looked left. Zemsta, Kowalski's tank, was gone. In its place was a crater. No, wait. The tank was upside down. The massive turret was buried deep in the earth. The hull was spinning its tracks in the air, the engine still screaming at full RPM. Upside down, wheels turning uselessly against the sky. Ross jumped down. He ran toward the Polish tank, stumbling over debris. He saw Kowalski. The sergeant was half out of the escape hatch in the hull floor, which was now facing the sky. He was dragging a crewman out by the collar. Kowalski's face was black. His uniform was shredded at the shoulder. "Janusz!" Ross grabbed him. Kowalski looked at him. He didn't recognize Ross. His eyes were wild, animalistic. He swung a fist, wild, desperate. Ross ducked and grabbed Kowalski's wrists, pinning them. "It's me! It's Ross!" Kowalski stopped fighting. He looked at the upside-down tank. He looked at the sky where the planes were banking for a second run. "Kurva mać!" Kowalski screamed. He pointed at the bombers. "Why? Why are they doing this?" "Mistake!" Ross yelled. "It's a mistake!" "Mistake?" Kowalski shoved Ross away. He pointed to his tank, where flames were beginning to lick at the fuel lines. "Tell him it is a mistake. Tell my driver." Another whistle, louder this time. The second wave. "Down!" Ross tackled Kowalski into a fresh shell crater. The ground liquefied. They were buried in dirt. Ross felt Kowalski's body rigid against his, shaking not with fear, but with a rage so pure it felt like heat. The noise was a continuous, tearing roar, like the earth itself was being ripped in half. When it stopped, for a second, Ross grabbed Kowalski's collar. "We need smoke. Yellow smoke. Do you have any?" "Burned." Kowalski spat dirt. "Everything is burned." "My tank," Ross said, standing up. "I have canisters. Come on." They stumbled back to Calamity. Vance was already outside, throwing stowage boxes off the fender in a frenzy. "I can't find the igniters," Vance was crying. Frustrated, angry tears streaked the grime on his face. "They're gone." "Use a flare," Ross yelled. "It won't light the canister." "Force it! Pierce the tin!" Ross grabbed a bayonet from his belt. He stabbed the top of the yellow smoke generator number 5. He twisted the blade. Metal screeches. He ripped a jagged hole in the lid. "Give me the flare." Vance handed him a friction flare. Ross jammed it into the hole. He struck the igniter cap. Hiss. Nothing. "Damn it!" Ross struck it again. Phoom! A jet of yellow gas erupted, hitting Ross in the chest. "Sir!" Vance yelled. "I'm fine," Ross coughed, his eyes streaming. He threw the canister onto the engine deck, but the wind was cruel. The smoke stayed low, clinging to the tank like a heavy blanket, rolling along the ground. "It's not rising," Vance yelled. "The downwash is keeping it down." "Get more," Ross ordered. "Build a fire. Pile them up." They worked like madmen. Kowalski joined them, throwing a burning seat cushion from a destroyed Jeep onto the engine deck of the Sherman. "More heat," Kowalski yelled. "Heat makes it rise." They piled 3 canisters into the burning cushion. The heat intensified. The yellow smoke mixed with the black oil smoke. And then physics took over. The heat from the burning cushion created a localized thermal column. The yellow smoke caught the updraft. It stopped crawling. It spiraled. It shot up, a violent, unnatural geyser of sulfur cutting through the dust. "Go!" Ross screamed at the smoke, his voice raw. "Go up, damn you!" In the lead bomber of the third wave, Colonel Henderson was lining up his sights. He was 30 seconds from the drop. "Bombardier, lining up for third run." "Sir, I have a weird visual," the bombardier said. 3 o'clock low. "Identify." "Yellow. Bright yellow. It's pulsing." Henderson grabbed his binoculars. He saw the gray dust. He saw the black fires. And there, cutting through it all, was a pillar of yellow. It looked desperate. It looked frantic. "Is that a German decoy?" the co-pilot asked. "They know our signals. Could be a trap." Henderson watched the smoke. "It's coming from a tank. A Sherman." He could see the silhouette now that the smoke had cleared a hole. He saw tiny figures around it, not running for cover, standing, waving a panel. "Germans don't wave," Henderson whispered. He remembered the briefing. Canadians are aggressive. They might be ahead of schedule. The bomb bay doors were open. The release point was 5 seconds away. 5 seconds to kill another 100 men. Or 5 seconds to fail the mission and let the Germans survive. Henderson slammed his hand on the throttle quadrant. "Abort!" He overrode the autopilot. He yanked the yoke hard left. "Close doors! Close doors! Friendlies! Those are friendlies!" "Sir, we're drifting into the 44th's path." "I don't care. Fire a red flare. Signal everyone to abort." The bomber banked violently. The centrifugal force pinned the crew to their seats. Below them, the third wave of bombs did not fall. The shadow of the plane swept over Ross and Kowalski, but the death stayed inside the belly. The roar of the engines faded, replaced by the sound of the wind. It was strange how quickly the noise left. One second, the world was ending. The next, there was just the settling of dust. The silence was absolute. It was a heavy, physical weight, pressing down on the ears. Ross stood there, staring at the retreating planes. His chest was heaving, but he couldn't hear his own breath. He felt like he was underwater. He touched his ears. His gloves came away bloody, ruptured eardrums. He slid down from the tank tracks, his legs suddenly turning to jelly. He hit the ground hard and just sat there, legs splayed. Vance crawled over to him. The kid was shaking so hard his teeth were chattering, a rapid-fire clicking sound that seemed impossibly loud in the quiet. "Are they gone?" Vance mouthed. Ross read his lips more than he heard the words. "They're gone," Ross croaked. The sound of his own voice was distant, tinny. Vance reached into his pocket and pulled out a crumpled pack of cigarettes. He tried to light one, but his hands were vibrating too much. He couldn't make the match meet the striker. Ross reached out, steadied Vance's hands, and struck the match. The flare of the flame was startlingly bright in the gray dust. They sat there for a minute, passing the cigarette back and forth. No words, just the shared intimacy of being alive when you shouldn't be. The yellow smoke continued to sputter from the canister on the deck, a dying beacon that nobody needed anymore. Then, the other sounds began to creep back in, the crackle of burning canvas, the hiss of cooling radiators, the low moans of men waking up to pain. Ross looked up. Kowalski was walking towards them. The Polish sergeant moved slowly, like an old man. He stopped in front of Ross. He was holding something. It's a jagged piece of steel, shrapnel. He dropped it in the dirt between Ross's boots. Ross picked it up. It was hot. Stamped on the metal, barely visible, were the letters USGOV. Ross looked up. He wanted to say, "I'm sorry." He wanted to say, "It wasn't my fault." But he looked at Kowalski's eyes. The Polish sergeant had lost his tank, his crew, and his trust in the world. "We move in 30 minutes, Kowalski said. His voice was flat, dead. "Janusz, your crew. I have a driver left. We will take a spare tank." Kowalski spat on the ground. "We finished the job. For Warsaw. Not for you." Kowalski turned and walked away. He didn't look back. Ross watched him go. There was no brotherhood of victory here. There was only the brotherhood of survival. And it was a cold, bitter place. Vance crawled out of the hatch. He was holding a headset. "Sir, radio is working again." "Sort of." "What are they saying, Vance?" "Command says, 'Good effect on target. Advance immediately.'" Ross laughed. A dry hacking sound that hurt his throat. "Good effect," he repeated. He dropped the American shrapnel into his pocket. "Load up, Vance. We're moving out." We took the ridge that afternoon. The Germans were so shocked by the bombing, they barely fought back. They thought we were crazy. Maybe we were. I didn't write a letter home about that day. What would I say? "Dear Mom, we won, but the sky tried to kill us?" So I wrote about the food. I wrote about the weather. I lied. I never saw Kowalski again after the war. I heard he settled in Scotland. I wonder if he ever looked up when a plane went over. I wonder if he kept that wrench. People ask me about the victory parade. They ask about the cheering crowds in Paris. I don't remember the cheering. I remember the silence inside the tank that night. We were parked in an orchard. The engine was off. Ross was cleaning his gun, scrubbing the soot off the metal. Smitty was sleeping, twitching in his dreams. I was staring at the radio dials. We were alive. We had won the battle. But nobody said a word. We just sat there in the dark, listening to the metal cool down. Tick, 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 waiting for the next mistake. That's the truth of it. The war didn't end with a cheer. It ended with us looking at each other and realizing that from now on, we would always be a little bit afraid of the sky.